beautiful. I bear witness that there is no God but Allah, who came in the person of Master Fard Muhammad, to whom praise is due forever. And in the name of our most exalted Christ, our eternal leader, none other than the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And in the name of our beloved, divine reminder, our brother, our friend, a warrior, leader for Islam, none other than the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. And in these three great and powerful names, I greet you all, the people of God. Yes, I said the people of God. In the greeting words of peace and paradise of Assalamu alaikum. How's everyone doing this morning? He woke us up, right? Happy Savior's Day. I just want to read you something from the Self-Improvement Study Guide, the basis for community development. The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan says, it is a final warning to the government and the people of the United States of America. It is a final call to black people that you must change the way you think and the way you act. Because the time has arrived for you to do better and be better, or suffer the chastisement of God until you submit your will to do the will of God. Did you get that?
Yes, ma'am.
So that means we have to change the way we think. He said each study guide is designed on the guidance of Allah God to produce self-examination, self-analysis, self-correction, and to quicken in each of us the self-accusing spirit. For it is only when we are awakened morally that we have to face the self-accusing spirit that leads to our resurrection. He says resurrection is that process that begins with the self-accusing spirit. What is the self-accusing spirit? When you go to lie, cheat, rob, or steal, there's a little voice that comes in your head that says, don't do it. But sometimes we suppress that voice and we do it anyway. And then we have to suffer the consequences of either going to jail or either just being chastised for what we knew we should not have done. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
The self-accusing spirit does not end until we become one in perfect harmony or peace with Allah God in His creation. So that voice never ends in our head because we were made to be right and we were made to be right thinking. But our challenge is to rise above emotion into the thinking of God. Our power is lining up and tuning in with God. Have you ever thought about someone and all of a sudden they called you on the phone and you say, I was just thinking about you? That is because we have the power and the ability to tune in. In 1974, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad at a Savior's Day address said that we would build a nation of gods. He said in about 30 to 40 years, many of his followers would start coming into their powers and abilities. Power meaning capacity. Having the capacity on a spiritual level to create and produce things. We have intellectual powers that have already arrived and are already within us. But it takes some igniting, right? Yeah. The ignition is the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. We have to do what the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan has prescribed for us. In Study Guide 18, it says, rising above emotion into the thinking of God. Many of us are reactionaries. You step on my foot, I sock you in the head. Instead of saying, excuse me, you good, what happened? You know, you got to love your brother and sister. You might have to take the high road, which is sometimes considered the low road. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
That is our challenge, brothers and sisters, rising above our own emotions into the thinking of God. The word emotions derives from the word emote, which means to be moved. We must rise above our emotions and become immune to the forces outside of ourselves and inside inside of ourselves that moves us to be contrary to the very nature in which God made us. And that is to be right, to think right, and to do right. This begins the thinking process, which empowers us to tap into our powers and our abilities. Right thinking. The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan says, only our righteousness will sustain us. Anybody bear witness to that? Yes. Only our righteousness, brothers and sisters, connects us to the God. There are satanic characteristics that rise up in the human character that blocks us from connecting to the God of righteousness. Let's take cleanliness, for instance. We've all heard that cleanliness is next to godliness. Is that right? Yes. Well, I would just like to say that cleanliness is godliness. Because cleanliness is the removing of obstructions, those activities that impede us from the pathway of God. Obstructions not only in our environment, but in our hearts, in our minds, in our brain, and in our relationships that keep us from being harmonious with the one and true living God. How about lying or being dishonest? How many of us lie and are dishonest? Many of us, right? Because we were brought over here on a lie. We were brought over here through technology. They didn't bring us here and rightly guide us. They brought us here to wrongly guide us and do what they wanted us to do and to build their kingdom. Is that right? Another impediment from God is false pride or arrogance, thinking more of oneself than one ought to, is not the way of God. How about greed or avarice? It's not the way of God. He does not want us to be greedy with our food, with our thoughts, with what we think someone has that is not ours, that he's given us our gifts we haven't tapped into yet. How about jealousy or envy? That's not the way of God. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad says jealousy destroys from within. We may look at our brother or our sister who seem to have gained favor over us. And that's what happened to Cain and his brother Abel. Abel seemed able while Cain was sweating in the field and felt like he wasn't getting his just due. So Cain murdered Abel, much like we are doing our brothers and sisters today. Just because we cannot rise above emotion into the thinking of God, we are killing one another and leaving families in distress, leaving families into grief. We must increase our love for each other, and it begins with yourself. Is that right? Yes. And that's how some of us are when we see our brother or our sister effortlessly able to do what they do, while others are grinding hard to get theirs. And we become envious of that person, much so like they're envious with the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. And they want to murder our brother because he's bringing us light and he's bringing us truth. And he's ridding us of falsehood. We don't see the trials and tribulations that person goes through. We don't know what they've been through, right, Sister Mina? We don't see their loss or their gain. My sister has a business. We just see what we see, success. And some of us can become so envious and jealous of that success. I saw Brother Alfonso put a post up yesterday about people comparing internet social media networks and how he never compares himself to Brother Abdul Malik Saeed Muhammad because that's his brother and he learned from his brother. Why does he even have to say that? Because some of us are treacherous and trifling and we don't know how to close our mouth. The Bible says, he who keepeth his mouth in such time keepeth his soul. So let us remember all the sayings pertaining to the time in which we are living, that we do not fall victims to our enemies. Right. Victims to the enemy within and victims to the enemy without. That's right. In the Supreme Wisdom, our lessons are talking about taking the 4 devils. Now, you know, many of us back in the day thought that taking the 4 devils' heads off meant that you go kill 4 white people and you bring their head in a bag to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. All praise is due to Allah. You know, we have to see the wisdom of God in everything, lest we do the wrong thing. Is that right? Yes, ma'am. So, what I was saying, in the Supreme Wisdom, we got to bring 4 devils. It's not necessarily the devils under a skin color. All right? We can say all day, the white man is the devil, and he is. But you know, some of us have been made to become devils. Is that right? It's devils that are leading characteristics in our hearts and in our minds. That leads us to lie. That leads us to steal. That leads us to be jealous of one another, envious of one another, want to kill one another. We must increase the love for each other first. Is that right? Yes, ma'am. Because we're living in a time where we have to separate. All praise to Allah. We have to separate. Those characters must be severed from our character if we are to become one with God. Isn't that our goal? To become one with God so that we can become a pure conduit for the use of God, His will, and His way. The only protection is in Allah. We can't fight the enemy like Allah can fight the enemy. We can only submit to the one that He has left as a reminder. We can only submit to the one that is in our midst. And we are blessed to have the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan in our midst. Is that right? Let's give the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan a round of applause, because he deserves it and more. Praise be to Allah. Our best defense is the offense of our faith and trust in Allah. And you know that we say faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things unseen. Where a doctor can tell you you have 2 weeks to live, your faith may carry you over to 2 more years. But we have to have faith, and we have to believe in Allah, not the enemy. Many of us have lost loved ones. That energy has gone, but that energy never dies. So the moment you think about your loved one, that loved one remains in your heart. I just wanted to give us a little bit of comfort for those who have lost loved ones, because today is the peace ride. And we will be going from corner to corner, praying for families that have lost loved ones to senseless murders by design. By design. All praise is due to Allah. I wanted to talk a little bit about perception. Perception is based on the degree or level of your intellectual and spiritual capacity to see. Is that right? So if you, in your faithfulness, take 2 steps, your enemy is going to take 2 steps along with you. So that means we must take an additional 2 steps in order to be 2 steps ahead of the enemy. Is that right? But I thank you for listening to these words, and I pray to Allah that you got something out of it that will help you with your self-improvement, my self-improvement, our self-correction, and please continue to keep the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan in prayer, yourselves, and your family. I leave you as I came before you in the greeting words of peace and paradise of Assalamu Alaikum. And now put your hands together for our hard-working soldiers. Him and his wife are so hard-working. Great helpers
dear sisters. Valerie Muhammad, that is my 27 right there. That's right. How y'all feeling?
Fine, sir.
You sure?
Yes, sir.
Positive.
Yes, sir.
Let me start off in the proper fashion then. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Most Merciful, I bear witness that there is no God but Allah, who appeared to us. He is the long-awaited Messiah of the Christians, the long-awaited Mahdi of the Muslims. And he appeared to you. He appeared to who? He appeared to us. Black as you are, beautiful as you are, despised as you are, rejected as you are. Is that what the book says? The stone that the builders refused. But Allah came to you. He had to come to you. Who else would he come to? Why would he come to the white man to raise him up?
Good question.
The white man is already raised up, and he's raised up because he's standing on top of your neck. Do you understand? So he had to do something that would show the world who he is. That's right. If you want to show somebody that you're strong, you got to pick up something heavy. If you got to show somebody that you're smart, you got to solve an equation that no one else can solve. Do you understand? See, when you got to do something, when you got to show something, you pick the hardest obstacle, the brightest stage, so everybody can say, damn, he did that. And nobody's more rejected, more despised than the Aboriginal man and woman here in North America. And Allah set it up that way. So he appeared to you in the person of Master W. Fard Muhammad. And that's what we're going to get into today. Who is God? So we're going to deal with that today, if it be the will of Allah. I further bear witness that Muhammad is his messenger. The most honorable Elijah Muhammad, to be right and exact, and down to the modern times. And that is no disrespect to Prophet Muhammad ibn Abdullah, peace be upon him. He did what he was supposed to do.
That's right.
He revealed the Holy Quran over the span of 23 years in his hometown, in his home region. But what he revealed set off a reverberation all over the world. Set off something called a renaissance. We look at white people today and we say, wow, look at them. They have this, they have that. They run this, they run that. They didn't have any of that before the revelation of the Holy Quran. Do you understand? It was the revelation of the Holy Quran that set the table for what they did. Now, we should have picked up the ball as soon as it was revealed, but we was going through something at the time. We was a little caught up at the time. But you see, I have to acknowledge what the Holy Quran promised. This is the Holy Quran.
Come on.
This is the pocket version. That's why it looks so small. This ain't the midget Quran. This is the Holy Quran. But in this book, it promised me and promised you that certainly for every nation, a messenger would be raised. For every who? Nation does not just mean a body of land, a government, or something of that nature. It could just be a group of people. So Allah promised in the Holy Quran that every nation would have a messenger, but not only that, that messenger would be raised from that nation, from amongst them. But see, this is how I know the next thing I'm about to say is going to prove that it's not necessarily when it comes to us talking about Prophet Muhammad ibn Abdullah. Because it says not only will that messenger be raised, but also that messenger will speak the language of the people. I'm going to say that again. He's going to speak the language of that people. Prophet Muhammad ibn Abdullah, beautiful man, did a beautiful work. But I got bad news. For those that think that he is that messenger for this nation. Now, we can learn a lot from him.
That's right.
The Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad was given 104 books to study, most of which dealt with Prophet Muhammad. But Prophet Muhammad did not speak English. So sorry. He spoke Arabic beautifully, but he did not speak English. And he, pardon my English, he damn sure didn't speak Ebonics.
That's right.
So Allah had to raise somebody who not only spoke our verbal language, but someone who spoke the language of our pain, the language of our journey, the language of our sojourn. Somebody who knows what it's like to be despised, rejected. Huh? He had to raise somebody who knew what it was like to walk into a room and somebody considers something about you as soon as you walk in the room. You don't have to say nothing about yourself. You don't have to describe nothing about yourself. See, that's why to my so-called homosexual brothers and sisters, I'm going to need you to stop comparing that to being black. I'm going to need you to stop comparing that to being brown, being Native American. See, when I walk into a room, I ain't got to come out the closet as a black man. You know who I am as soon as I walk in the room. You know what I've been through as soon as I walk in the room. I ain't got to sit down and tell you who I lay with, who I'm attracted to. As soon as I walk in the room, a racist-minded individual, whether they're white or black, will say, look at that nigga. As soon as I walk in the room, suit, tie, smelling good, haircut, or dirty, or crippled, old or young. As soon as I walk in that room, look at this nigga. So Allah had to raise somebody who knows what that's like. He had to raise somebody who had to come up in one of the worst parts of America in his time, who walked down a dirt road on his way to school and would look to his right or left and see a poplar tree with one of his friends and classmates swinging from it. When I say swinging, I don't mean on the swing having fun. I'm talking about that strange fruit. 7-year-old little boy. He probably played catch with him. Probably played hide and go seek with him. Went to school with him, and he's on his way to school, and he look up and he see him swinging. See, he had to raise somebody up who knows what that's like. And that's why he raised the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And that's why I believe that Muhammad is indeed his messenger. But the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad to be right and exact and down to the modern times. Do you understand? But then came a brother who had to make sure that he operated as a bridge to a new generation of Aboriginal people. I don't know if you can tell by looking at me, but I wasn't around in 1975. I hope you can tell. I don't know if you can tell by looking at me, but I wasn't around in the 1930s. I hope y'all can tell I wasn't around in the 1930s. If y'all can't, then boy, I got some work to do. So somebody had to bridge that gap between the time where the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad walked in our midst, between the time when Master Fard Muhammad, God in the person, walked in our midst. A man who was set on that journey July 30th, 1972. A very important day, because the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad on that day, he stood up at the rostrum of what was then known as Temple Number 2, now known as Mosque Mariam.
That's right.
And he called on the minister to come and sit in his seat. In whose seat? Whose seat? See, it says in our lessons, the past history shows that Almighty Allah sends prophets and apostles for the people's guide and example. It also says in our lessons that the laborers must speak and use grammatical punctuation in its proper tense. In its proper tense. See, there's a certain breed a Negro walking around America right now who claims to bear witness that there is no God but Allah, who came in the person of Master Muhammad, who claims to bear witness that the most honorable Elijah Muhammad is his messenger, but then they want to pump the brakes right before bearing witness to the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. But see, I got to disabuse you just a little bit on that. Because the most honorable Elijah Muhammad on July 30th, 1972 was using proper pronunciation in the proper tense. He said, everywhere you hear him, listen to him. Everywhere you hear him. That's future tense. Everywhere you go, everywhere you hear him, listen to him. That means that when you run into him, when you happen to hear him, that means future. Because some like to say, well, you know, the messenger said that, but he said it just for back then. No, sir. You don't know your lessons. You don't know your lessons. He said, wherever he tell you to go, go. Wherever he tell you to stay from, do what? Real simple. I don't care how despised and rejected or dumb, blind, deaf you are. That's as simple as it gets. Is that right? I'm speaking none other than the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. And in those three great names, I greet you in the words of peace. We said in a beautiful language that we spoke long before we knew anything about this grafted, bastardized language called English. And it's also the language that we spoke long before we knew anything about the grafted bastard that taught us that language. That's the Arabic language. And I greet you in that language with the words of peace. Assalamu alaikum. Give yourselves a round of applause. How y'all feeling? You feel like you look?
Yes, sir.
You feel like you look?
Yes, sir.
And you in good hands. Then give yourself another round of applause. How many of you have a copy of this book? Raise your hand. All praise is due to Allah. I personally call this the Black Man's Bible. You should not be caught black without this book. Nobody should catch you being black without this book. The next time some Peckerwood police pull you over, if he take you to jail and you did not have a copy of this book somewhere in your possession, you deserve it. Whatever he take you in for, I don't care what he take you in for. I'm just going to come up to the station and check that they have a message for the black man. Go ahead. Do what you got to do. That's real. This is what we need for our survival in this enemy's world. But as soon as you crack this open, on the very first page of the very first chapter, in the very first sentence, he makes it clear about perhaps our main issue as a people in this world. And that is our confusion about God. In that very first sentence, the most honorable Elijah Muhammad says that for thousands of years, the people who did not have the knowledge of the person or the reality of God worshiped their own ideas of God. He has been made like many things other than what he really is. He's talking about God. Raise your hand if you know that the white man destroyed you and your culture and your history and your identity. Good, y'all so smart. All praise due to Allah. But guess what? Before he destroyed you, he destroyed the perception of God. I'm going to say that again. Long before he destroyed you, he destroyed the proper perception and understanding of God. He couldn't fade God himself. Don't get it twisted. He didn't touch God. But sometimes you don't have to touch the source itself. All you got to do is block a people from getting to that source. Do you understand? So, in the year 312 AD, Constantine, who was an atheist, but he found an opportunity through Christianity to take over the world. And he said, in hoc signo vinces, which in Latin means with this sign, we come. He said he had a dream and he had a vision. I bet he did. No, that's real. Wicked people dream too. Wicked people have wicked dreams. He saw a cross, which looked something like a sword, and he said, man, if I grab it from the top and turn it around, I can conquer an entire world. You can get mad if you want to, but the truth is, he was right. He's been dead for unknown years, but he still controls you. Constantine still controls the majority of the black community. Is that correct? Is that true? So that was 332 AD. Now we were brought here as slaves into the year 1555. Think about that. So over 1,200 years before we were made slaves from gods to niggas, he took and niggified the understanding of God. He enslaved the understanding of God and the perception of God. So we got to backtrack and deal with that misunderstanding of God before we go any further. Do you understand? All praises due to Allah. All praises due to Allah. But I'm going to start off with the basics. That's the most honorable Elijah Muhammad. Give him a round of applause. Whether you realize it or not, this man paved the way for us. Whether you realize it or not, most of us wouldn't even be alive if it were not for this man. But in the Final Call newspaper and its predecessor, the Muhammad Speaks, we have something called the Muslim Program. And in that Muslim program, at the very end, there are 10 things that we want and 12 things that we believe. Is that correct? Yes, sir. But at the end, he saved this for last. Now in the church, we was taught to keep God first. Is that right? That's okay. But the most honorable Elijah Muhammad taught us not to feed a baby steak. See, steak is a very hard meat to eat and digest. You really shouldn't eat it. That's why half of us walking around with the gout right now because we eating too much steak. So he saved the hardest thing for destroyed people to understand for last. And it says, and I quote, we believe. Who believe?
We believe.
We believe that Allah God appeared in the person of Master W. Fard Muhammad, July 1930, the long-awaited Messiah of the Christians and the Mahdi of the Muslims. We believe further and lastly, listen, that Allah is God and besides him there is no God, and he will bring about a universal government of peace wherein we can all live in peace together. This is point number 12. Point number what? 12. I'm going to need you to remember that. Because we're going to deal with that number 12 as well as point number 12. Do you understand? Now, what I intend to do, if it be the will of Allah, is speak directly to 3 groups of people within our community that struggle with the identity of God. My Christian brothers and sisters. You know, we always picking on the Christians. But we're going to do freedom, justice, and equality today. Because we're going to deal with our Christian brothers and sisters. And we're going to pull straight out the Bible. As young folks say today, we're going to have receipts today. Do you understand? But also, we got to deal with our Muslim brothers and sisters. Because all Muslims ain't walking around with this bow tie, with these beautiful headpieces. Some of our Muslim brothers and sisters, they don't believe in this. They call it shirk. They call it kafir. We're going to deal with that too. But then that third group, this is a fast-growing group. A group that, especially in my generation, is growing like wildfire because of the confusion of God that we were all raised under. That's the so-called atheist group. Those who don't even believe in God at all. That old, I'm not religious, I'm spiritual. How many of y'all heard that before? Raise your hand. Yeah. We're going to bust that up too. Please believe it. So we're going to start with our Christian brothers and sisters. Y'all all right?
Yes, sir.
So to my Christian brothers and sisters, I have to tell you first and foremost, God is a man.
That's right.
You just cannot make him other than man. So we're going to start with the first receipt. Y'all all right?
Yes, sir.
Y'all ready?
Yes, sir.
I'm going to hurt somebody's feelings.
Step on the toes, brother.
If I hurt your feelings, walk it off, all right? You'll be all right. It's about 37 churches across the street. Pick one, go in there, you know, sing a church song. They can sing over there, though. Sing you a song, pray on it, and come back. You'll be all right. We're going to start off with the first receipt. This is the book of Habakkuk.
That's right.
Chapter 3, verse 3 from the King James Bible. God came from Wait. I thought God was above my head in the sky on a cloud. I thought he was some kind of spirit or some energy. And if I light enough incense and light enough candles and I pray really, really hard, I might be able to experience him and catch the Holy Ghost. What do you mean God has a place of origin? As we would say in South Central, God got a set.
Go ahead.
God got a hood that he claimed. Where you from, God? I'm from T-Man, cuz. I'm from T-Man. I mean, this is what it says. Go fill up your car at any of these gas stations. If the wrong brother see you and he don't like what you got on, he gonna bang on you.
That's right.
Where you from, cuz? Where your mama stay? Where your daddy stay? Y'all know how I go. God came from T-Man and the Holy One from Mount Paran, Selah. His glory covered the heavens and the earth and was full of his praise. Full of his what?
Praise.
One thing you'll notice in the Nation of Islam is hundreds of thousands of us, and about 80% of us have a last name Muhammad, which means one praised much and worthy of praise. So let me translate this. God had a set. He came from Timon, and the Holy One from Mount Paran, Selah. His glory covered the heavens and the earth and was Muhammad. This is what this is saying. This is in your Bible, my Bible, our Bible. Y'all got that?
Yes, sir.
So next time somebody bang on y'all, say, man, what's that God from? Just say, man, he from T-Man blood. Now this is the book of Genesis, chapter 1. Which verse?
Chapter 1.
Which verse? Which verse? I like that.
27.
So God created man in his own image. Wait. See, y'all, I'm confusing myself now. See, I was raised in the church.
That's right.
I forgot to tell y'all that.
Come on.
I thought God was a spirit.
Come on.
How can I be in his own image? I'm not a spirit.
Come on.
I got hands, I got fingers, I got toes, I got a big head. I am not a spirit.
That's right.
But we were created in his own image. The image of God created he him. They had to say it again. In the image of God created he him. Male and female created he them. So the sisters and the brothers are in God's image.
Come on, that's right.
You are in God's image. You are in God's image. In his what? Image. See, we got to really deal with this. And this is the book of Numbers, chapter 11, verse 17. Now look at this first sentence. See, these first sentences are killing me, man. And this is God talking. And I will come down and talk with thee there. Now, everybody in here got a cell phone, right? Somebody call you and say, where you at? I'm at the mosque. All right, I'm going to come down there and holler at you. Now, will you be standing in front of the mosque awaiting a spirit to pull up in the 86 Cutlass? No. If you saw that, you would run. Now, they got Teslas that drive themselves, but the 86 Cutlass, it shouldn't be just driving itself. Do you understand? So this is God telling them, talking to Moses, and I will come down and talk with thee there. And they will take off the spirit which is upon thee, and will put it upon them. And they shall bear the burden of the people with thee, that thou bear not thyself alone. So this is God saying that he going to come down. Now check this out. With him will I speak mouth to mouth. He talking about Moses again. He said he's going to talk to Moses mouth to mouth. And not in dark speeches. Meaning not in something in a confused fashion. You know how people say, oh, God talked to me and he was speaking in tongues. Oh, God don't do all that weird stuff. When God talked to you, he speaks straight words. Do you understand? And the similitude of the Lord shall he behold. Wherefore then were ye not afraid to speak against my servant Moses? So he said he's going to speak to Moses mouth to mouth. Now Abraham is widely regarded by all the Abrahamic religions as the friend of God. This is the verse in the Bible that proves that. Art not thou our God, who didst drive out the inhabitants of this land before thy people Israel, and gavest to thee seed of Abraham, who is thy friend forever. 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 This is his friend forever. Now, y'all be honest with me. Be honest with your little brother. Can y'all be honest with me?
Yes, sir.
If Brother Landon came to the mosque one day and said, I have a spirit friend. I talk to him every day. You can't see him, only I can see him. I pray that every one of you believers that hear me say that will report me immediately to my captain, to student minister Abdul Malik, bring me up on charges, put me out the mosque, at least till I get my mind right. If I come up here talking about Cap, I got a spirit friend. He been my friend forever. Cap, and y'all won't see me for about 6 months. Do you understand?
Yes, sir.
Let's keep it moving. Now this is important because we just talked about Abraham, right?
Yeah, right.
Abraham really solidified the manhood of God. Brothers.
Yes, sir.
Brothers.
Yes, sir.
How many of y'all like to eat? Raise your hand. Yeah. All y'all about to raise your hand. All these double chins and jelly rolls on the back of the neck that I see. I'm going to ask that question again. That was not sufficient. Because them pot bellies are not, them ain't mystery pot bellies. The Son of Man searched for trillions of years and is determined there is no mystery pot belly. So, brothers,
Yes, sir.
how many of y'all like to eat? In this chapter of the Bible, this is saying that Abraham was chilling. See, I got a translator for y'all. He was chilling one day. And he looked up and saw God. He saw 3 men.
That's right.
One of those men was God.
That's right.
Let me read it. And the Lord appeared unto him in the plains of Mamre. And he sat in the tent, in the door, in the heat of the day. So that's how you know God is black. See, if he wasn't black, he wouldn't even point out how hot it is. He pointed that out. It was hot. And he lifted up his eyes and looked. This is Abraham. And lo, 3 men stood by him. And when he saw them, he ran to meet them. Wouldn't you run if you saw God? He ran to meet them from the tent door and bowed himself toward the ground. See, he prayed. But look at how he prayed. He bowed toward the ground. When was the last time you went in a church and saw them praying with their head to the ground? If you go to a Muslim household, now you won't see us doing it in the mosque because security is first in the Muhammad's mosque.
That's right.
But when a Muslim prays in the safety of his own home or her own home, we make full salat,
That's right.
where we put our head, as we call it, mud to the rug.
Yes, sir.
If you go into one of our masjids for Salat al-Jumu'ah, you will see us with our mud to the rug. If you grew up Christian like I did and you see that, you think, man, look at these weirdo Muslims.
Come on.
But your Bible is telling you that that's the proper way to pray.
That's right.
When you praying to God.
Teach.
But he put his head on the ground and said, my Lord, If now I have found favor in thy sight, pass not away, I pray thee, from thy servant. Let a little water you be fetched, and wash your feet. Wash your who? God got foots. Wow. What kind of spirit you know has feet?
Come on.
I wonder what size he is. I just wondering. But then check this out. And I will fetch a morsel of bread and comfort ye hearts, after ye shall pass on. But at the very bottom, it says, and Abraham hastened into the tent unto Sarah. Sarah was his wife.
That's right.
And he said, baby, go make a plate of food for God. Well, let me put it in Shakespeare's language.
That's right.
It said, make ready quickly 3 measures of the fine meal, and knead it. Knead means it's a bakery word. So he told his wife to make some food for God.
That's right.
So this is how we know we dealing with a black God. First he said, damn, it's hot outside. Then he said, man, I sure is hungry. And Abraham was like, I got you. Baby! Warm up that beans. In fact, make some bean soup from scratch. Make some bread from scratch. That's how you know Sarah was an MGT. She knew it. Listen. They left the part out in the Bible. Because see, Abraham, you know how FOI sisters, we get a little out of our lane. He sit up here and tried to tell Sarah how to make the bread. See, in the part that they cut out, Sarah was like, I got this. Stay in your lane. They cut that out because it was redundant. They was like, see, that's how you know men rule the world. We cut that part out of the Bible. But it's more than that. This is John 5:46. For had ye believed, this is for those in the Christian family who say, well, everything you just pointed out was in the Old Testament.
Come on, bring up the money time.
See, the way I was raised, we don't believe in the Old Testament. It's Jesus today, Jesus tomorrow, Jesus next weekend. Praise Jesus in the name of Jesus. Cross the street with Jesus. Riding shotgun with Jesus. If Jesus ain't in it, I don't care. Well, let's talk to Jesus. Let's talk to Jesus, said. Who said?
Jesus.
If this was in the physical Bible, it would be in red. Meaning it's the words of Jesus. He said, for had ye believed Moses, ye would have believed me. For he wrote of me. This is Jesus saying that if you down with Moses, you down with me. Moses is the Old Testament. Jesus is the New Testament. But Jesus is telling you, hey, if you roll with Moses, then you need to roll with me. Like down in Mr. Louis Farrakhan makes it clear. If you roll with the messenger, you got to ride with me. Do you understand? All praises to Allah. See, this next one is heavy. It's probably my favorite. This is Matthew chapter 5, verse 8. Pay attention. Blessed are the pure in heart. Blessed are the who?
Pure in heart.
See, if you have a pure heart, they shall see God. If you pure in heart, you can see God. It's hard to see a spirit. That's why most of your apartments, if your apartment is up to code, they got this thing up on the ceiling called a carbon monoxide detector. You need that, and that's very important. Because that's a tasteless, odorless gas that can kill you. So if you're trying to say God is a tasteless and odorless gas, something that you can't even see, like my sister said, that can kill you spiritually. But this is saying that God is something that you can see. But it prefaces it by saying, blessed are they who are pure in heart. You got to be pure in heart in order to see God. You got to be pure in heart in order to see who? God. But look what the messenger said. The messenger said, whenever you look at a black man, you are looking at who? God. You are looking at who? God. So that tells you that the most honorable Elijah Muhammad was pure in heart. Yes. And if you look at your black brother or sister, brown brother, sister, Native American, brother, sister, and you can't find God within them, then you need to check your heart. If every time you come amongst your people and all you see is the negative, look at these niggas. Look at that, look at his shoes. Look at her shoes. Look at her purse. Look at her kitchen.
Come on.
Y'all know what I mean by kitchen. We be kitchen checking. We be kitchen checking. Look at his haircut. Look at him. See, when you pure of heart, see, you look past all that. We taught in our lessons that the God does not care about the poor part. He didn't say we don't know the poor part. We see that raggedy kitchen. We see the buckshots, but we see how beautiful your spirit is. We see other aspects of you. So when you're pure in heart, as your Bible says, Matthew 5 and 8, blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Is that correct? All praise is due to Allah. So when you see your Christians, break out that Bible. In the Nation of Islam, we call the Bible the poison book. The what? And that's not a diss. That's not a diss. If you go to CVS right now and you go to the medicine section, everything they got on that shelf is poison. That's why when you pick it up and turn it around, it has instructions. Do not take more than 2, 3. It even breaks it down by age. If you're 12 or under, only take such and such and so forth. If you're pregnant, don't take it at all. If you exceed those limits, it can kill you. If you stay within those limits, then you'll feel much better. That's how we have to deal with the Holy Bible, the so-called Holy Bible, because it is not holy. It tells you at the very first cover, even before the first page, the King James Version. So if you want to use the Bible as medicine, pay attention to the instructions. The instructions of who? God, who appeared in the person of Master W. Muhammad. And you'll feel better tomorrow. Do you understand? All praises due to Allah. All right? Now I got to come to my, I don't want to use Cap Shahid's words. He likes to call them abadabbas. But I got to come to my Muslim brothers and sisters. Those that some of you falsely consider to be real Muslims. And you fall for that because of the costume that they wear. Oh, they got a beard. Oh, they wearing a certain jalabiyah, and it's a certain amount of inches above their ashy ankles, and you know, and they speak the Arabic so well. They must be real Muslims. See, that's why every 4 years a politician fools you. That's why, I hate to say it, sister, that's why every 4 weeks some raggedy mouth Negro fools you. And brothers, that's why ever so often some beautiful sister fools you. Because we go off of costumes. We go off of what they look like. But we don't stop to ask them what's going on between their ears. So to my Muslim brothers and sisters, I have to tell you, just like I told my Christian brothers and sisters, God is a man. You just cannot make him other than man. And we got receipts. We got receipts. Let's start it off. This is from the Holy Quran to Yusuf Ali. It says, fight them, and Allah will punish them by whose hands? Your hands. Oh man, see, y'all confusing me again. If God is a spirit, how is Allah going to fight them, and why through me? This is telling you that when God fights, he fights through us. Cover them with shame. Help you to victory over them. Heal the breasts of believers. This is Allah saying that the only way Allah fights is through your hand. And then it goes on to say that it was not you that slayed him. It was I that slayed him. By your hand, do you understand? Now, Earlier I mentioned that we are charged as students of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad as being kafir, which means disbelief. Also, they call it shirk, which is someone who, makes partners or whatever to Allah. But we're going to deal with that kafir part. If you ever hear a Muslim, so-called Orthodox Muslims, say that we are kafirs, I want you to do like Bill Duke on Minister Society. You ever seen Minister Society? Bill Duke is that purple black bald head brother that had him in the interrogation room. And then I think it was Old Dog, he said something he wasn't supposed to say. And he pointed at him and said, you effed up, right? So if an Orthodox Muslim come to you and say, oh, y'all are kafir, say, oh, see, you messed up. Because see, the true translation of kafir in the English language, which is hard to do because English is a bastardized language. Arabic is a pure language. But the pure meaning of kafir, if you translate it properly, is somebody who is just ungrateful. Somebody who is what? Ungrateful. Somebody who was what? Ungrateful. So we're going to talk about ingratitude, especially to so-called Orthodox Muslims. Let's talk about being ungrateful. Let's talk about being ungrateful to the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Who fought to have Muslim schools in America for black people? Who fought for that? Who fought the police for that? Who died for that? It wasn't no Abadabbas, it wasn't no Jalabias, no Dusty Kufis fighting the police in the 1930s just to teach our own children. I'm sorry. So ungrateful. So ungrateful. Who put the Quran in the hand of the black man after it was taken out of our hand in 1555? Who put it back? It was Master Fard Muhammad. It was the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. It was the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. So every time you crack this book open, you should be grateful. Even if you ain't never stepped foot in a Muhammad's mosque. Even if you never will. Every Aboriginal man on this earth, especially in this wilderness, that cracks open the Holy Quran, you should first give praises to Allah and then thank Him for the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. There's no question about it. All praises to Allah. In fact, to this day, who are the only group of Muslims, who have the fervor and the courage to bang on this enemy, but not from 9,000 miles away, but right up under his chin. The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan is banging on this beast